In the endless black of space far beyond the Milky Way, there was a mighty empire known as the Valari Dominion. The Valari were tall, proud, and strong. Their skin shimmered faintly with silver scales, and their glowing blue eyes gave them a look of power and command. Every Valari child was trained for battle from the day they could walk. To them, fighting was not only a skill, it was an art, a tradition, a way of life. Among them was Captain Zinara Vel, a young but famous warrior girl. Her name was known across hundreds of systems. She was strong, fast, and clever in combat. She had never lost a duel, not once, even against older and more experienced fighters. Her people respected her, her enemies feared her, and her victories had become stories told to young Valari recruits. One evening, inside the shining crystal halls of the Valari High Command, the elders of the Empire gathered to discuss a rumor that had been spreading through the galaxy. The rumor was about a new species, small, fragile-looking creatures who called themselves humans. They came from a tiny planet known as Earth, orbiting an average yellow star. Despite their weak bodies and short lives, these humans had begun traveling through space, building colonies, and even standing up to stronger races. To the Valari, this was amusing. How could such soft-looking beings dare to enter the stars? The elders laughed at the reports of humans using machines to make up for their lack of natural power. One of the elders, a huge Valari named General Varnock, said proudly, "Let these humans come. The stars belong to those who can take them. If they challenge the Valari, they will learn humility." But Zinara, standing among the council, felt something different. She wasn't angry or afraid. She was curious. "General," she said, her voice calm but sharp, "if they are so weak, why do they still rise? Why do they keep moving forward when so many others fall?" Varnock smiled and answered, "Because they do not know their place." Zinara turned her gaze toward the holographic screen showing images of human starships and their strange designs, machines made not for beauty, but for purpose. She could see a fire in their creations, a kind of will. It made her wonder what kind of beings could build such things. That night she made a decision. If the humans were truly reaching the stars, then it was her duty as a warrior of Valari to meet them, to test them, to see what they were made of. And so, Zinara sent a challenge. Through the Galactic Communication Network, a glowing message was sent to the United Earth Council, the main human government that represented Earth and its colonies. The message was clear. From Captain Zinara Vel of the Valari Dominion, "I challenge humanity to a duel of honor. Let your greatest warrior face me in combat. If you win, the Valari will acknowledge your strength. If you lose, you shall admit your weakness before the stars." The message spread across human space like wildfire. News channels, social media, and military networks all talked about it. Some humans laughed. Others were nervous. The Valari were known for their deadly skill, and accepting the challenge could mean humiliation, or worse. Inside Earth's orbital command base, the leaders of humanity gathered. Admiral Cole, a serious man with sharp eyes, read the challenge twice before setting the datapad down. Around the table sat generals, scientists, and ambassadors. Some wanted to decline politely. Others wanted to send a powerful soldier in a battle mech. Then someone mentioned a name: Captain Ryan Hale. Ryan was not the strongest man in the military. In fact, compared to many others, he looked ordinary. Average height, quiet voice, calm eyes. But he was known for something different, his mind. He had solved battles that no one else could, saving colonies and fleets through clever thinking and deep understanding of enemies. When the council asked if he would go, he only nodded. "I'll go," Ryan said simply. "But I'll represent us as we are, not as they expect us to be." Days later, a grand stage was prepared. A neutral combat arena was built in orbit around Valari Prime, where both species would meet. The arena floated like a small moon, a massive ring made of transparent energy fields and reinforced platforms. Around it, thousands of ships from both sides watched silently. When Zinara arrived, she stepped out in shining silver armor, her plasma blades resting on her back. Her people cheered her name. She stood tall, confident, every step echoing with pride. But when the human ship docked, Zinara's confidence wavered for the first time. Out came Captain Ryan Hale wearing a simple dark gray combat suit. No heavy armor, no visible weapons. He didn't walk with the posture of a warrior, but rather like someone calm, unshaken by the thousands of alien eyes staring at him. The Valari laughed. One shouted from the stands, "Is this the best your world can offer?" Ryan only smiled softly and looked at Zainara. "Are you Captain Zainara?" he asked politely. She nodded. "I am." "You are smaller than I expected." "And you," he replied, "are taller than I imagined." There was no anger in his voice, just calm humor. That surprised her. She had expected fear or arrogance, but not warmth. The ceremonial announcer, a neutral robot envoy, floated between them. "By ancient tradition, the duel will begin after the warriors share their intent. Do you, Captain Zainara, fight for the honor of your people?" "I do," she said proudly. "And do you, Captain Ryan Hale, fight for the honor of your people?" Ryan paused for a moment before replying, "I fight to understand yours." That answer caused murmurs in the Valari crowd. They didn't understand what it meant. To fight for understanding? What kind of warrior was this human? As the combat countdown began, Zainara studied Ryan carefully. His stance was relaxed, but his eyes were focused, sharp, intelligent. He seemed to be observing everything, the gravity fields, the light reflections, even the crowd's noise. When the signal flashed start, Zainara moved like lightning. Her plasma blades blazed blue and white as she dashed forward, aiming to end the fight quickly. Ryan stepped aside at the last second, letting her strike the ground. Sparks flew, but he didn't counterattack. She lunged again, faster, harder. He moved just enough to dodge. It was as if he could read her moves before she made them. The Valari spectators cheered their champion, but some began to frown. This human wasn't fighting like prey. He was watching, waiting, learning. After several minutes, Zainara paused, breathing steadily. She looked at him and said, "You do not attack." "Are you afraid?" Ryan shook his head. "No, I'm just trying to understand your rhythm." "Rhythm?" she repeated, confused. "Yes," he said softly. "Every fighter has one. Every warrior moves with a pattern. Once I know it, I can see your next move," she growled, half insulted, half intrigued. "You speak as if battle is music." "Maybe it is," Ryan replied, smiling faintly. "We just dance to different beats." Back in the command halls, Valari generals watched with interest. This human was unlike any opponent they had faced. He was not strong in body, but there was something in his calmness that unsettled them. Meanwhile, on the human side, Earth's fleet watched quietly. Ryan's commanding officer whispered, "He's studying her. He's turning this into a game of logic." The duel went on. Sparks flew, blades clashed, gravity shifted, but Ryan kept his focus. He was not there to prove power. He was there to learn, to understand what made the Valari so proud. Zainara began to feel a strange mix of frustration and admiration. No one had ever made her miss so many strikes. No one had ever made her think so much during a fight. This human didn't look strong, but every move, every dodge, every look carried purpose. At the end of the first round, the arena lights dimmed. The announcer declared a pause. Zainara stood tall, blades humming. Ryan stood quietly, breathing evenly. She stared at him for a long moment and finally said, "You are strange, human." He smiled gently. "So are you," the crowd murmured again, unsure if they were witnessing a fight or the beginning of something far greater. Above them, the stars watched silently as two very different beings, one born from a world of power, the other from a world of persistence, took their first steps toward understanding each other. And for the first time, Zainara felt something she had never felt before in battle. Not anger, not pride, but curiosity. The arena lights brightened once again, bathing everything in a pale blue glow. The first round had ended, but the real tension was only beginning. Thousands of Valari eyes watched from the stands, whispering among themselves. Never before had they seen their undefeated champion paused by a small human who had barely lifted a weapon. Captain Zainara stood tall, her silver armor shining with faint scratches from her own strikes that had missed their mark. She felt something she hadn't felt in years, a flicker of uncertainty. This human, Captain Ryan Hale, was not what she expected. He didn't fight with rage or fear. He didn't boast or taunt. He simply observed. His every movement was deliberate, calm, and balanced. On the other side of the arena, Ryan adjusted the glove of his combat suit. His face remained neutral, but his mind worked fast. He had learned much from the first round. The Valari were extremely strong, but their movements were predictable. They had trained too perfectly, like machines repeating ancient lessons. There was beauty in their form, but also weakness in their pattern. The announcer's voice echoed through the arena. Combatants prepare for the second round. Observation phase complete. Intent phase begins. That meant they would now speak before the next stage began, a tradition among the Valari to test the mind as well as the body. Zinara stepped forward. "Human," she said, her voice firm but not mocking this time. "You are unlike any opponent I have faced. You do not fight as a warrior should. You avoid instead of striking." "Why?" Ryan looked up at her. "Because I don't fight to destroy," he replied. "I fight to understand. If I destroy my opponent too quickly, I learn nothing." The audience laughed softly. To them, it sounded foolish. But something about his tone silenced their amusement. Zinara tilted her head, studying him carefully. "You think you can learn from me?" she asked. "Yes," he said simply. "Every fighter teaches something if you listen." Those words struck her deeper than any blade could. Zinara had always believed victory came only through dominance. Yet this human spoke of learning through combat, as if battle were a dialogue rather than a contest. Before she could answer, the arena lights flashed again, signaling the next phase. "Begin, second round." Zinara leaped forward instantly, her plasma blades igniting in arcs of white-blue light. She attacked faster than before, her strikes sharper, her angles unpredictable. She wanted to test this human, to push him beyond calmness, to make him react instead of just observe. Ryan dodged again, but this time he didn't retreat. He began to move differently, more fluid, more precise. When Zinara swung her right blade, he ducked under it and touched a glowing panel on the arena floor. The gravity shifted suddenly, pulling her off balance for half a second. She recovered quickly, but in that half second, Ryan had already stepped behind her. The Valari crowd gasped. No one had ever managed to turn Zinara's momentum against her. She spun and tried to strike again, but Ryan was already out of reach. Her eyes narrowed. "You used the field," he nodded. "You taught me where the controls are when you stepped near them earlier." "You watched even then?" she asked, amazed. "I always watch," he said softly. For a few minutes the fight continued like a dance, her power against his precision. She would attack, and he would move just enough to redirect her strikes. He used her strength against her, letting the arena itself become his ally. But what truly surprised her was that he still hadn't drawn a weapon. He could have. Humans had many technologies for combat. Yet he hadn't used a single one. Finally, she called out between strikes, "Why don't you fight back?" "Are you mocking me?" Ryan stopped, breathing evenly. "No, I'm showing you something." She frowned. "What?" "That power without control is just noise." His words echoed in the silent arena. The Valari spectators exchanged uncertain glances. Even the elders who sat in the high observation platform began to lean forward with interest. Zinara charged again, but now her mind was divided, half focused on the fight, half thinking about his words. For the first time, she felt her movements lose their rhythm. Ryan saw it instantly. He stepped aside, used her forward motion, and tapped a small control on her armor's power joint. Her plasma blade flickered and shut down. She froze. The crowd went silent. Ryan could have ended the match right there, but instead he stepped back and lowered his hands. "Reset your weapon," he said calmly. "The fight isn't finished yet." Zinara looked at him, confused. "You had me beaten. Why stop?" He smiled faintly. "Because you're starting to understand." Something stirred in her chest, a strange feeling of respect. She reactivated her blade, but this time she didn't rush forward. She circled him carefully, eyes steady, trying to think as he did. The next exchange was different. She moved less aggressively, watching for traps, testing patterns. Ryan smiled to himself. Now she was learning. For the next several minutes, the fight became balanced. Zinara's attacks grew smarter, her defense tighter. Ryan found himself actually challenged. He dodged one strike too slowly and her blade grazed his arm, leaving a faint burn mark. The crowd cheered. Zinara's heart raced, not from pride but excitement. She had drawn blood from someone who fought like no one she had ever known. She stepped back, blade still glowing. "You bleed," she said, her voice almost curious. Ryan looked down, touched the burn, and nodded. "That's how I know I'm alive." For a moment, both stood still. The hum of the arena was the only sound. It was no longer a fight. It had become a conversation made of movement and will. When the round finally ended, the announcer's voice echoed again. End of second round. Both combatants still standing. No victor declared. The Valari audience didn't cheer this time. They sat quietly, thoughtful. They had seen their strongest warrior, and a human exchange something far deeper than blows. Zainara deactivated her blades and walked toward Ryan. Her armor hissed softly as cooling vents released steam. "You are not what I expected, human," she said. Ryan tilted his head slightly. "And what did you expect?" She thought for a moment. "Someone afraid. Someone who hides behind machines," he smiled. "Machines help us, yes, but they don't define us." Zainara frowned slightly. "Then what defines you?" "Our choices," he replied. "Our ability to care, to adapt, to learn. That's what makes us human." His words felt heavy with meaning. She didn't fully understand, but she wanted to. For the first time, she looked at a human not as a rival, but as a mystery worth solving. Later, inside her private chamber aboard the Valari command ship, Zainara sat in silence. The dual recordings played on a holographic display. She watched herself move, fast, strong, perfect, but predictable. Then she watched Ryan move, calm, precise, adaptable. He used her own strength as his advantage. Her training had taught her that the strongest wins. But Ryan had shown something else. The one who learns faster wins. She clenched her fists, then relaxed. "This is what makes humans dangerous," she whispered to herself. Meanwhile, aboard the human observation vessel Endeavor, Ryan sat in a small resting chamber. His arm was being treated by a medic. Admiral Cole appeared on the screen. "You handled yourself well, Captain," Cole said. "The Valari didn't expect that." Ryan gave a small nod. "Neither did I. She's remarkable, strong, proud, but willing to learn. I think she's beginning to see who we really are." Cole smiled faintly. "And who are we, Captain?" Ryan looked out the viewport at the glowing planet below. "We're the species that never stops learning." The next day, a message arrived from the Valari Council. Instead of ending the combat as tradition demanded, they requested another round, a final one, to be held before the entire Empire. It was unheard of. The Valari rarely repeated duels, but now curiosity had overtaken pride. Zainara personally sent the message to Ryan. It read simply, "One more match." Not for victory, for understanding. When he read it, Ryan smiled softly. "Now we speak the same language," he said quietly. That night, across the galaxy, millions watched the news. Humans and Valari alike spoke of the duel. Some called it a battle of strength versus intelligence. Others called it a meeting of hearts. But for both worlds, it had become something more, a bridge. And as the stars shone quietly above them, both Zainara and Ryan prepared for their next encounter, no longer as enemies, but as equals searching for meaning. The true test of humanity had only just begun. The sun of Valari Prime rose bright and golden, its light shining through the transparent dome of the great orbital arena. The final duel between the Valari warrior girl Zainara Vel and the human captain Ryan Hale was about to begin. The entire Empire watched. Even faraway human colonies had tuned in to witness the event. It was no longer just a fight. It had become a symbol of what both species stood for. For the Valari, it was about pride, power, and tradition. For humanity, it was about heart, intelligence, and the will to endure. Inside her preparation chamber, Zainara stood silently before a mirror of polished crystal. She had removed most of her armor, leaving only the light chestplate and arm guards. The previous matches had taught her something that no teacher ever had. Strength alone was not enough. She had fought countless battles, but this human had made her think. As she tied her long silver hair into a braid, she looked at her reflection and whispered, "He does not fight to win. He fights to understand. Then I must do the same." Her attendant, a young Valari cadet, looked surprised. "Captain, are you saying you will not fight for victory?" Zainara smiled faintly. "Victory means nothing if you learn nothing." At the same time, on the human ship Endeavor, Ryan stood calmly in the docking bay, looking through the viewing window at the shining arena below. His arm had fully healed from the burn he received in the last round. He was not nervous. Instead, he felt a quiet sense of respect for his opponent. He spoke softly to his crew before leaving. "This fight isn't about showing who's stronger. It's about showing who we are." One of the engineers nodded. "Then show them, Captain. Show them what humans can do." Ryan smiled. "I plan to." When both entered the arena, the crowd went silent. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Zinara walked forward first, her armor gleaming under the lights. Her eyes met Ryan's, and for the first time there was no arrogance in them, only focus and determination. Ryan bowed politely before her. "Ready when you are," she nodded. "I will not underestimate you again, human." "And I won't underestimate you," he replied. The announcer's voice echoed, "Final duel, begin." In a flash, Zinara charged forward. But her attack was different this time, less wild, more calculated. She tested the field first, shifting her footing and changing direction mid-strike. Ryan smiled slightly. She had learned. He moved with equal grace, adjusting to her rhythm, countering each move without using weapons. Every step was measured, every dodge timed perfectly. The arena floor glowed with shifting energy fields, changing gravity and traction to test both fighters. Zinara leaped upward, using the zero-gravity field to spin midair. Her blade slashed down like a streak of lightning. Ryan rolled aside, barely missing the blow, and touched a small panel on the wall. A section of the arena flickered, sending a wave of magnetic interference through her armor. Her movement slowed for a brief second, but she recovered fast, flipping backward and landing on her feet. The crowd roared with excitement. One Valari general shouted, "Yes, that's our warrior. Show the human your strength." But in the human observation deck, people smiled quietly. They knew Ryan wasn't done yet. The duel became faster, sharper, and more intense. Sparks flew as plasma blades sliced through the air. The sound of boots on the metallic floor echoed through the arena. Zinara's attacks were powerful but thoughtful now. She remembered Ryan's words. Power without control is just noise. So she began to control her rhythm, changing pace, confusing his timing, forcing him to react differently each time. Ryan noticed it immediately. "She's learning faster than I expected," he thought. He smiled inwardly. Good. That means she's starting to understand. He began to counter with strategy instead of speed. He used the arena's systems, gravity fields, lighting patterns, sound reflections, to confuse her. Every time she thought she had trapped him, he turned the environment against her. At one point, she pinned him against the energy wall and raised her blade. But before she could strike, he activated the control panel behind him. The floor tilted suddenly and both were thrown sideways. They rolled across the floor, separating at opposite ends. Zinara laughed softly as she stood up. It was the first time she had ever laughed during combat. "You fight like no one I've ever met," she said between breaths. Ryan smiled. "That's because I don't see fighting as destruction. What do you see it as?" He looked at her directly. "A language. A way for two people to understand each other without words." Those words echoed through her mind. For a moment, she almost forgot the crowd watching. The fight had stopped feeling like a test of strength. It had become a lesson in connection. The duel continued. Sweat formed on Zinara's forehead. Her body ached, but she refused to stop. Every move Ryan made taught her something new. She began to predict his patterns just as he had predicted hers before. In one exchange, she managed to disarm him, sending his glove control device flying across the arena. The crowd roared. For the first time, the human was unarmed. Zinara raised her blade again, ready to end it, but then paused. Ryan stood still, breathing deeply. He didn't flinch or step back. Instead, he said calmly, "Now it's your choice. End it or learn from it." Zinara froze. Her heart pounded. For so long, she had been taught that victory was the only goal. But now, standing over this calm, fearless human, she felt that striking him down would mean losing something greater. Slowly, she lowered her blade. The arena fell silent. The announcer waited for confirmation, but none came. Ryan stepped closer, his voice gentle. "You see? You already won something far more important." Zinara looked at him with confusion. "What do you mean?" He smiled softly. "You won against your own fear, the fear of not being perfect." For a long moment, she said nothing. Her breathing slowed. Then she turned off her blade and took a step back. The crowd murmured in shock. The Valari elders whispered among themselves, unsure how to respond. But then, to everyone's surprise, Zinara spoke loudly enough for all to hear. "This duel is not over because of defeat. It is over because of understanding." A hush fell across the entire arena. Ryan nodded, proud. "Well said, Captain Vel." The announcer's voice echoed uncertainly, but then officially declared, The final duel ends, no victor. Both combatants stand equal. The Valari audience did not cheer immediately. They had never seen such an ending. To them, every duel ended with victory or loss, life or death. But here, for the first time, it ended with respect, and then slowly applause began. First from the human spectators, then from a few Valari, and soon the entire arena was filled with thunderous applause that shook the air. Zinara looked around, her eyes wide. She had expected anger, but instead saw admiration. Even her own people, who once laughed at the humans, now bowed their heads with respect. Ryan walked toward her and extended his hand. "You fought well." She looked at his hand, then at his calm face. After a moment, she took it and shook it firmly. "You too," she said. "You fight with mind and heart both." "That is rare," Ryan smiled. "That's humanity's secret. We fight hardest when we care the most." After the match, both warriors were invited to stand before the Valari High Council. The hall was filled with shimmering lights and ancient symbols of power. The eldest among the Valari, High Commander Thalor, rose and addressed them. "Captain Zinara Vel," he said, his deep voice echoing through the chamber, "you have brought honor to our people. Yet you also bring a new lesson. What have you learned from this human?" Zinara bowed her head. "I have learned that strength without understanding is blind. I have learned that even the smallest race can hold great wisdom." The elder turned to Ryan. "And you, human, what have you learned from our champion?" Ryan replied humbly, "That courage is not only found in the heart, it's found in the will to grow. Your people are strong because they never stop striving. In that we are not so different." The elder nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. Then he said, "Perhaps in the end the stars are big enough for both of our kinds." The audience bowed their heads in agreement. Later, as Ryan prepared to leave for his ship, Zinara approached him privately. "Ryan," she said quietly, "when I first challenged your species, I thought you were weak. But now I see. You are strong in ways I never understood," he smiled. "And you taught me that strength and honor can live together. Thank you for that." She looked up at him, her glowing blue eyes softer than before. "One day perhaps our people will fight side by side instead of against each other." "I'd like that," he said. They stood in silence for a moment. Two warriors from different worlds, no longer enemies, but partners in respect. Far above them, the stars of the galaxy shimmered quietly. The duel had ended, but something much greater had begun, a friendship between two civilizations. The story of Zinara Vel and Ryan Hale would be remembered for generations as the duel that united the stars. The arena had gone silent after the final duel. Zinara Vel, the proud warrior of the Valari Dominion, stood on the floor of the glowing platform, staring at the human, Captain Ryan Hale. Neither of them had been defeated in the traditional sense, yet both had learned something far greater than any victory. The Valari elders gathered in their crystal chamber above the arena. High Commander Thalor, the eldest of all, looked down on the combatants. His voice echoed with authority. "We have always believed strength alone defines a warrior. Yet these humans, they think differently. Perhaps it is time we learn more than just fighting." The other elders nodded silently. Some were skeptical. Their culture had been built on battle, honor, and victories that demanded respect. But even they could not deny what they had witnessed. Ryan Hale had not relied on weapons, brute strength, or raw aggression, and yet he had stood equally against Zinara Vel, their undefeated champion. Zinara herself felt an unfamiliar mix of emotions. She had trained for decades, mastering every technique known to her people. Yet this human had challenged her not with power, but with mind and heart. Her pride was intact, but her perspective had shifted. She now understood that strength alone did not define a warrior. Understanding, adaptability, and wisdom were equally powerful. Back in her private chamber, Zinara removed her armor and sat on the floor, exhausted but thoughtful. Her attendant, the young cadet Lyra, entered quietly. "Captain, why did you stop fighting to win? You could have struck him down in a moment." Zinara shook her head slowly. "Winning would have taught me nothing," she said. "I realize that the human fights not to destroy but to understand. And in understanding, there is power far greater than the sharpest blade." Lyra tilted her head. "But he is not Valari. How can he teach us strength?" Zinara smiled softly. "Because strength is not only in muscles or armor. It is in thought and patience and knowing when to act and when to wait. The human has taught me that." Meanwhile, Ryan Hale returned to the human observation vessel Endeavor, where the crew welcomed him warmly. He had no injuries other than a small burn on his arm, and his calm expression showed no sign of fatigue. Admiral Cole approached him.
"Captain, your performance was remarkable."
"Even the Valari elders are impressed," Ryan shook his head. "It was not about impressing them. It was about showing what humans truly are. Not just fighters, but learners, thinkers, and survivors." Cole nodded.
"And did they understand?"
Ryan smiled faintly. "I think they are beginning to. Some may not fully grasp it yet, but they have seen that our strength is not always obvious. It comes from our choices, our courage, and our willingness to adapt." A few days later, Zinara requested a private audience with Ryan. The Valari Council granted permission, curious to observe the interaction. They watched from a distance as the two warriors met in a smaller arena, away from the public eye. Zinara approached cautiously, her silver armor polished and shining. She offered a polite nod. "Human, you have changed something within me. I have always believed that victory was the only path to honor. You have shown me another way." Ryan smiled gently. "I did not come to change you. I only fought as I always fight, with thought, patience, and respect. You have learned from yourself, not from me." Zinara paused, considering his words. She had expected arrogance from humans, but instead found humility, clarity, and wisdom. It was foreign, yet fascinating. "I wish my people could see what I see now," she said. "They value power above all else. They see fear as weakness and mercy as a flaw." Ryan nodded. "And yet fear can teach caution and mercy can teach respect. Humanity has learned that the mind and heart can guide strength, not only the body." Zinara studied him for a long moment. She realized that humans had survived against far greater odds than the Valari had ever known. They had thrived not because they were the strongest in the galaxy, but because they adapted, collaborated, and learned from every challenge. Over the next several days, Zinara spent hours observing the human crew. She watched them repair ships, strategize for defense, and solve complex problems in real time. She noticed how they respected each other's opinions, even when they disagreed. Every decision was deliberate, measured, and thought through. One evening she asked Ryan, "How can your species survive against so many stronger enemies?" He looked at her, eyes calm and steady. "By knowing that survival is more than winning battles. It is about understanding your environment, learning from mistakes, and working together. Strength matters, but so does intelligence, patience, and respect." Zinara reflected on this quietly. The Valari valued strength above all else. They trained for combat from birth, seeking perfection in every strike, but they often overlooked creativity, teamwork, and compassion. She realized something important. Strength alone could win a duel, but it could not win the trust, respect, or admiration of others. Humans had demonstrated that in ways no Valari warrior ever could. The day came when Zinara addressed the Valari Council publicly. The council chamber was filled with elders, generals, and young warriors eager to hear what she had learned. She stood tall, her voice strong but calm. "Honorable elders, I have faced the humans in combat. I expected weakness. I expected fear. But I have seen something different. These humans fight not just with body, but with mind and heart. They do not seek destruction alone. They seek understanding. They survive not only because of power, but because of wisdom, patience, and adaptability." A hush fell over the chamber. Some elders nodded in agreement. Others frowned, struggling to understand how weakness could appear so strong. "We have always believed strength defines a warrior," Zinara continued. "But strength without wisdom is dangerous. The humans have shown us that true power lies not only in skill, but in how one uses it, in thought, in courage, in respect." High Commander Thaler rose slowly. His eyes glowed faintly in the dim chamber. "Captain Vel speaks truth," he said. "The humans are indeed different. Not weaker, not stronger, simply unique. Perhaps there is much we can learn from them." Zinara bowed her head slightly. "That is why I suggest we observe them more closely. Let us learn from their methods as they have learned from our ways. It is not shame to learn, it is honor." The announcement sent waves of surprise through the Empire. For centuries, the Valari had never considered learning from outsiders. Yet Zinara's words sparked curiosity, discussion, and reflection. Young warriors began to whisper about the humans' cleverness. Some elders grumbled but secretly admired the logic. Even Zinara herself felt a sense of pride. Not in victory, but in the understanding she had gained. She realized that honor did not always come from defeating others. It sometimes came from recognizing greatness where it existed, even in unexpected forms. Meanwhile, Ryan continued his observations. He noted how Zenara and the Valari were beginning to change. Their movements became less rigid, more thoughtful. Their attacks in practice matches became more calculated. Even their discussions with humans became more respectful. He smiled quietly. This was the real lesson, not in a duel, not in a fight, but in understanding and growth. The humans had not forced respect through violence. They had earned it through clarity, patience, and courage. One evening, Zenara invited Ryan to stand on the arena platform together. They looked out at the stars beyond the dome. "Ryan," she said softly, "I understand now. Humanity is not only brave, they are adaptable. They think, they care, and they survive in ways we cannot always predict. I see why your species has endured," Ryan nodded. "And your people are incredible, Zenara. Strength, honor, loyalty. They are traits all species could admire. Together, humans and Valari could accomplish great things." Zenara smiled faintly, her eyes glowing in the dim light. "Perhaps one day they will fight together instead of against each other." "Perhaps," Ryan replied. "And perhaps the stars will shine brighter for it." In the days that followed, the story of the duel spread across the galaxy. Humans and Valari alike shared accounts of the final match, the conversations afterward, and the lessons learned. The message was clear. Victory was not always measured by strength, but by understanding, courage, and heart. Zenara Vell returned to her training with a new perspective. She still practiced her strikes, her speed, and her agility, but now she practiced thinking, observing, and learning from every opponent. She had seen firsthand that the greatest warriors were those who combined power with wisdom. Ryan Hale returned to his fleet with the knowledge that he had changed not only a battle, but the hearts and minds of an entire species. Humans were no longer just small and weak in the eyes of the Valari. They were clever, brave, and capable of inspiring respect across the stars. And above all, both Zenara and Ryan knew that their story was only the beginning. One duel had taught more than any war ever could. Humanity's strength was more than physical. It was in the mind, the heart, and the will to learn. The final day of the great duel had arrived. The orbital arena hovered over Valari Prime, bathed in soft morning light. Thousands of spectators, both Valari and human, filled the seats, or hovered in their ships beyond the arena. The moment was not just about combat anymore. It had become a celebration of understanding, courage, and mutual respect between two species. Captain Zenara Vell stood at the center of the arena, her silver armor polished and her blades resting on her back. She had spent the past days reflecting on the lessons learned from Captain Ryan Hale, the human who had shown her that strength alone was not the measure of greatness. She now felt a new purpose: to demonstrate the power of respect, courage, and intelligence together. Ryan Hale arrived shortly after, stepping onto the arena with his calm demeanor. His suit was simple, practical, and light, but there was a quiet strength in his posture that demanded attention. Unlike the first rounds, both warriors now faced each other not as opponents seeking to prove dominance, but as equals seeking to test the limits of their skill and their understanding. The announcer's voice boomed over the arena. "Welcome, honored spectators. Today we witness a duel not of victory or defeat, but of honor, skill, and respect. Let the final combat begin." The crowd was hushed, anticipation shimmering through every mind. Even the Valari elders, sitting high above in the observation chamber, leaned forward, eyes wide with curiosity. For centuries they had recorded battles of strength, but this duel promised something entirely different: a demonstration of intelligence, strategy, and mutual respect. Zenara moved first, as was customary for the Valari. But her steps were calculated, deliberate, and thoughtful. Each swing of her plasma blades was carefully measured, designed not merely to strike but to teach. Ryan, in response, moved with his familiar calm, using every advantage in the arena without ever being reckless. His strategy was simple yet brilliant: read her moves, anticipate her patterns, and turn her strengths into opportunities for both defense and insight. For several minutes, the arena became a dance. Sparks flew as plasma blades clashed. Energy fields shifted beneath their feet, and every movement was precise. The Valari spectators watched in amazement. This was no ordinary duel. They were witnessing the perfect combination of power and wisdom, strength and intelligence. At one point, Zenara leaped high into the zero-gravity section of the arena, spinning in the air as her blades cut through the simulated gravity waves. Ryan anticipated the movement and used the arena's magnetic field to pivot in midair, narrowly dodging her strike. Then, instead of counterattacking aggressively, he used her forward momentum to glide alongside her, keeping her unbalanced for a fleeting second. It was a subtle maneuver, but it demonstrated a mastery of strategy that made even the elders murmur in admiration. Zainara landed gracefully, smiling faintly. "You fight differently every time," she said, almost in awe. Ryan replied calmly, "I fight to learn, and you teach me as much as I teach you." The simplicity of his words carried weight. Zainara had faced countless warriors, but none had ever approached combat as a dialogue. Each of her attacks had been met with analysis and understanding, rather than forceful retaliation. She realized that this was not a weakness. It was the pinnacle of strength. As the duel progressed, Ryan and Zainara began to match each other's movements more closely. Every feint, dodge, and strike was met with a counter that was elegant, thoughtful, and precise. It was no longer a battle to dominate, but a demonstration of what true warriors could achieve when skill was combined with intellect and restraint. The crowd watched silently, captivated. Some of the Valari had never witnessed such a performance. Their culture valued victory, but here was proof that respect, intelligence, and strategy could be more powerful than raw strength. On the human side, spectators felt pride swelling in their hearts. This was a display of the very qualities that had allowed humanity to thrive despite the odds: adaptability, courage, and heart. Then came a moment that would be remembered for generations. Zainara attempted a swift strike aimed at Ryan's shoulder. It was fast and precise, one of her best moves. But Ryan anticipated it perfectly, not by sheer speed but by reading her intent. He sidestepped and lightly tapped her armor, not to harm but to demonstrate that even a slight adjustment could redirect force effectively. Zainara paused, blades raised. She realized in that instant that she was not merely facing strength. She was facing understanding, insight, and patience. She lowered her blade slightly, her glowing eyes meeting Ryan's calm gaze. "You are incredible," she admitted softly. Ryan smiled. "So are you. Your strength is unmatched and your focus is remarkable. But strength alone is not everything." For a long moment, both warriors simply stood, facing each other in silence. Then slowly, Zainara deactivated her blades completely and stepped closer to Ryan. The crowd erupted in whispers and exclamations. Never had they seen a Valari warrior voluntarily disarm during a duel. Even the elders were quiet, observing carefully. Zainara spoke, her voice carrying clearly through the arena. "Captain Ryan Hale, I have fought many opponents. I have defeated countless warriors, but I have never learned so much from a single duel. Today you have shown me that true power is more than strength. It is wisdom, respect, and understanding. For that I honor you." Ryan nodded, his expression humble. "And I honor you, Zainara Vel. You have reminded me that even the strongest must continue to learn. Your courage, focus, and determination are an inspiration." The two warriors clasped forearms, a traditional Valari gesture of respect, and the entire arena fell silent. Then slowly applause began, at first hesitant and then louder, until it filled the chamber and echoed across space. Humans and Valari alike stood to honor what they had witnessed. Not a victory, but a moment of mutual respect that transcended differences. After the duel, Zainara was invited to speak before the entire Valari Empire. Her words were broadcast to every system, every colony, and every ship in orbit. "Today we have faced a species unlike any other. We have seen their strength not in muscles or weapons, but in mind, heart, and courage. Humans have taught us that true warriors fight not just to win, but to understand, to adapt, and to honor their opponents. Let this lesson guide us as we move forward, not as conquerors alone, but as beings capable of learning and growing together." The Valari audience listened in stunned silence. Then one by one they began to applaud. It was not the applause of blind pride, but of respect and acknowledgement. Young warriors whispered to each other, inspired to learn more than just fighting techniques. The elders nodded, understanding that the universe held lessons even the strongest could not ignore. On the human side, Captain Ryan Hale returned to his ship with a sense of quiet pride. He knew that the duel had not only proven humanity's strength, but had also inspired a new kind of relationship between two civilizations. Humans were no longer seen as weak. They were seen as capable, clever, and worthy of respect across the galaxy. He reflected on the words exchanged with Zinara and the lessons learned, that courage is not only in facing danger, but in understanding and respecting others, that strength is not only in power but in wisdom, and that true victory often comes from mutual recognition rather than conquest. Days later, Zinara and Ryan met one last time before departing. The arena was empty now, only the stars as witnesses. Zinara spoke softly. "Ryan, when I first challenged your people, I thought we were so different. But now I see our strengths complement each other. Perhaps in time humans and Valari can face the stars together, not as rivals but as partners." Ryan smiled. "I hope so. There is much we can achieve together if we combine our skills, our wisdom, and our courage." Zinara nodded. "Then let this duel be remembered not as a contest of strength but as the moment we understood each other." Ryan extended his hand once more. "Agreed." Zinara grasped it firmly. In that simple gesture, two civilizations shared a promise: to fight wisely, to learn from each other, and to honor the courage within all beings. As their ships departed the arena, the stars above Valari Prime shimmered like never before. Across space, both Valari and human fleets looked toward the horizon, inspired by what they had seen. This was not just the end of a duel, it was the beginning of a new era. From that day on, the tale of Zinara Vel and Ryan Hale was told across the galaxy as the duel that left the stars in silence. It became a story of courage, understanding, and respect. It reminded all who heard it that true strength is measured not by force alone, but by wisdom, heart, and the willingness to honor others. And in every corner of the Valari Empire and human colonies, young warriors dreamed not just of victory, but of understanding, just as Zinara and Ryan had shown them.